All right. Hey, guys, it's Colton Lindsay here with Winning the Inner Game. You guys can go ahead. Obviously, this is sponsored by Fearless Agent. Go and check out fearlessagent.com for Fearless Agent coaching and training. Today, with this episode of 10 Minutes with Fearless Agent, we got Anthony here. And Anthony, go ahead and introduce yourself, what market you're in, and where you're from.
Hey, my name is Anthony Ferrando. I'm in Austin, Texas. I've been an agent for about 4 years now, doing strictly leasing, but I joined Fearless Agent beginning of this year. And if you want to contact me, you can reach out to me on Facebook. You can also call me really anytime, 512-766-7660. I'll be happy to hear from anyone who has a referral or a question or just wants to chat for a little bit. Can find me really anywhere.
Awesome. So Anthony, 4 years, I didn't know that. So you were doing leasing for the first 4 years of real estate.
Yes. Yeah. So I got my license. You know, I don't know if you noticed, I'm a young guy. I got my license when I was 20 years old, and I was attending college at the University of Texas. And so I got my license, and we have a sort of lucrative leasing market at UT that is all pre-leasing. And so I just started helping friends find apartments. And then when I graduated, I spent the past year and a half full time just doing leasing. And it's funny because I say, you know, I did 100 transactions last year, if you can believe that. But they were all leasing transactions. And so in December of last year, I looked at my numbers and I looked at how hard I worked, and I said, gee, you know, this really can't go on much longer like this. You know, and I said, something has to change. And so that's when I started, you know, looking into Fearless Agent.
So you were doing a lot of transactions. They were just leasing transactions, and I take it those are smaller paychecks then.
Much smaller. Yeah, like 10% of what you'd get for a sale.
Oh, really? Okay. And is it just a one-time paycheck, or are there any residuals involved with it?
One time. It'd be a percentage of the first month's rent, usually like 30 or 40% of 1 month's rent. And I used to joke, I said I was king of the one bedrooms because I did a ton of just one bedroom apartment rentals, you know, and, you know, it's easy, but it's hard at the same time because in pre-leasing, you're showing tenant occupied units, you know, nobody's happy to see you. You're collecting keys from leasing offices. It's a whole lot of running around for really not much reward.
So now you got into Fearless Agent. So how did you hear about Fearless Agent?
Okay, so like pretty much everyone else, your videos on YouTube led me to Fearless Agent. And, you know, I was listening to YouTube, watching YouTube videos and listening to podcasts since I started full time, year and a half. I mean, I listened to the First Day in Real Estate podcast with James Festini. I took in every video possible about selling real estate. I even got a Cole Realty Resource subscription this time last year, and I started cold calling, but I had no real path to success. I mean, I was doing all the wrong stuff in calling and just wasting so much time. So I went back to leasing because I had to pay my bills. And so anyway, I really identified with what you were doing. And I said, gee, I could do that. And you kept referring to Bob and Fearless Agent. And so I said, well, I got to at least give this guy a call. And I called Bob, and it's like a breath of fresh air every time you speak to Bob, you know, and I just said, I think this guy and what these people are doing, this is something I could replicate. And so I signed up.
I love that you say that it's something you could replicate, because that's a lot how I feel. I got my license when I was 21, so I was young like you. And, you know, the first year I did only 2 transactions. You know, that's when I finally met Bob. And then from there, I just grew year after year after year. And you know, a lot of people look at my videos like you and say, oh, man, Colton's got it figured out. But also it took me a few years to do it, but following this exact system. And I said the same thing. I can talk to people. You know, I can embarrass myself quite a bit in front of people. I'm good at that, right? So I just started calling people. I just started, and each year I got better and better at the process with Bob. So that's an awesome story, man. I love to hear about that. So what's your experience been with Bob? You had mentioned like a breath of fresh air. What's your experience been with talking with Bob in the training?
Well, he's first of all, he's very approachable. Every time you call him, he's very welcoming. You're never interrupting Bob. I mean, he might not take the call at that moment, but he's always returned the call same day. And he always has plenty of time for you. And the funny thing is, You know, I heard some people who you interviewed, they say they had a 2-hour conversation with Bob and then they never called him again. I'm sort of the opposite. I always call him. I've called him maybe 4 or 5 times in like the 3 months. And I always call him with what I think is one quick question. And then I'll ask that question, and then he asks me a couple of questions. And it turns out there were 5 or 6 things I was doing wrong that led me to have to ask him that question in the first place. And it you know, it blows my mind every time. I made a post earlier this week. I said, I didn't even want to call Bob because I thought, gee, this question I have is so silly. He's going to answer it in 2 seconds, and I'm going to feel dumb that I even called him. We spent a half hour just retooling my thought process, my approach to setting and attending appointments, and I dramatically changed things that I thought I was doing right. And every time I talk to Bob, it's like that, where I think I'm doing it right, and I think I have this question, but it turns out I've made substantial mistakes that led me to have to ask this question in the first place. And every time it's reassuring, and I get a little bit better talking to them. And also you mentioned, people look at you and they say, Colton has it figured out. I did the same thing. You know, when I signed up, I thought, oh, great, I'm going to do this. And I'm going to start just taking listings. And at the beginning of this year, I said, I'm going to do 50 transactions this year. Okay. And I didn't realize how nervous and how hard it was going to be just to get on the phone every morning. And I tracked the hours I was calling. In January, I was averaging like 5 hours a week of calls. Cause I just, I'd do 3 hours on Monday. I'd do 2 hours on Tuesday. I'd fail Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday I'd say, I'm going to call hard next week, like Bob says to do. And it took me a while to start taking Bob's advice. Cause he said, look, just focus on your input. And quit doing these leases. I mean, I did leases January and February too, because I couldn't cut the umbilical cord, and really dive in and take what Bob was saying to heart. And I found that the more I follow exactly what Bob says to do, exactly how Bob says to do it, the more success I have, and this week, I did 6 hours of prospecting yesterday, and you sort of get bit by the bug, you get a little bit of success, and now you can't take me. I was prospecting up until this call this morning, because now, I love it. I just stay on the phones, but it takes a little bit of time to sort of build up the confidence and really understand that if you just do what Bob says, your life becomes so much easier.
Absolutely. And that was the one thing like that I knew I could do. I could stay committed to the phone calls. And so it sounds like that's what you've done. It just like really started to get committed to those phone calls. And I would imagine that even though doing 6 hours of phone calls, it's not like every contact is a home run, right? How?
Not even close. Not even close. I had a little over 100 contacts yesterday. And by the way, I don't track the contacts. I do what Bob says. I track the hours. I track the appointments scheduled, listings taken, et cetera. Yeah. But I do look at the report. And I did a little over 100 contacts. And it was actually sort of a depressing day because I only had one good person that I'm going to follow up with. And actually, that was an appointment that's scheduled. And I'm going to meet with her on Monday. But that happened in the fifth hour.
You had to make 100 contacts to get one appointment?
Yes, and that was a good day.
Was it worth it? Was it worth it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And had I not had some success last week and the week before, it would have been more depressing than it was. I'll tell you that. But It absolutely was worth it to get that one appointment. And of course, it happened in the fifth hour. So had I quit at any point earlier than that in the day, I would have never talked to that lady and scheduled the appointment.
Yep.
So
it happened just right, just perfect. That was when I first started setting appointments. Then I started going on them, and then I wasn't getting the listing signed, and I was like, "Damn it! I'm getting on these appointments. I'm not getting the contract signed." And then it was all of a sudden, I wasn't getting those contracts signed. Like I was getting the contract signed, right? And it was it just went little by little. So how has your experience been with the presentation so far?
The presentations alone are worth the money. I took some listings last year. They were all rental listings, but I did what every other agent did. I did the tour, then I told them how awesome I was, then I did the CMA and tried to talk them off the ledge of overpricing, and then I crossed my fingers and we signed an agreement sometimes. But last week I took my first sales listing, And it was actually someone I met on Buy Owner Daily. He was a Zillow Make Me Move. Left this guy 7 voicemails week after week. Finally, we scheduled the appointment last week. He said he interviewed 3 other agents before me that week. And he said they all did the same thing. They kind of piddled around. They did the tour. They beat him over the head with the CMA. And he said he wasn't really impressed by that. But when I finished just the listing presentation and I did the in a nutshell close and I asked if we could get the ball rolling tonight, he was excited. He said absolutely. I mean, he was thrilled. And this is a guy he's in sales in another industry, and so he recognized that I have a process. And he said it was a presentation that made sense. It was logical, and he was thrilled to sign with me. And then I did the pricing presentation, which nobody's doing. And then we agreed on a price. And I asked him, how long do you want to wait? And he said, well, I want to do this quickly, and I'm moving. I'm helping him purchase too, and so we did the pricing presentation, and it was a no-brainer. And we left there, both of us excited to be working together. And if I didn't have those presentations, I would have done what those other agents did. Well, I would have never had the appointment to begin with, but I would have done what the other agents did, and not really known what I was doing, and it would have been a disaster.
How much was the listing for?
We're listing it at $274,900, and I'm pretty sure we're going to get multiple offers. It's in a very hot neighborhood.
What's the purchase price?
He's pre-approved for $400,000.
So $400,000 on the purchase plus $275,000 on the sell. $675,000. And are you doing 4% or 7% or a 6%?
6%.
Awesome. So let's say. So basically from the sale and the purchase, that's about a $20,000 paycheck with whatever your splits were with your office.
Yep, pretty much.
$20,000. How does that sound? How does that feel?
It feels great. It's a huge relief, I'll tell you that. It's a huge relief.
Is that a little bit better paycheck than a leasing?
Yeah, sure beats a $300 rental. I'll tell you that. Where you're standing out in the heat, hoping they show up for the appointment, and then they're 20 minutes late, and they don't want to see any other properties that you want to show them because they don't like that one. Yeah, much better, much more fun, totally much better experience, and yeah, a lot more rewarding.
Awesome. So congratulations, man. Once again, give people where they can contact you from.
You can find me on Facebook, Anthony Ferrando, or you can call me. The phone, if you have any questions, I'm always on the phone. So 512-766-7660. I'm happy to help any referrals you might have in the Austin, Texas or Central Texas area. Be happy to help in any way I can.
Awesome, man. And I would recommend, if any of you guys are already Fearless Agent watching, reach out to one another and start talking. That's what I do a lot. I'm always talking to as many people as possible, obviously with inside of my schedule, and just learning what other people are doing in their market and their experience, other Fearless Agents. So in the description, there's a link. You can watch a free 48-minute webinar, take Fearless Agent coaching and training for a test drive, and see what it's all about. And then if you guys are interested, you go to my website. There's a link in the description as well, and you can check out any of my training downloads that do a lot with your inner game and building up your self-confidence to go out and win on the phone and win on the appointments as well. Anthony, my man, thank you so much. I hope to be able to meet you in person with I'm thinking that there'll be a couple of Fearless Agent events this year, so I hope to be able to meet you in person at one of those, okay?
Same here, and thank you, Colton. I really appreciate everything you do.
Hey, man, you have a ton of awesome energy. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thank you.